Hey everyone, welcome to another Run Wild with Us Storytellers Happy Hour. I'm Lisa Kastner. I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild Press, and I'm here with Tiki Hazlett, who is one of our amazing authors. And we have this happy hour once a month at various times just to mess with you. And the MO is we actually usually invite at least one person. Today it's just two of us, because hey, why not? And what we do is we drink and um, we will tell stories on the fly. So actually, I'm first going to ask Tihi to describe our process, and then we're going to take it from there. So take it over.
Yeah, this is going to be fascinating because usually we do this off camera before we start, but we were too busy talking and chatting it up. Uh, we totally forgot to do this anyway. But I had a jar full of prompts, different story prompts, and we will each pick one and then we will tell a story. Um, yeah, and we give each other like a couple of minutes to kind of figure it out because it's on the fly. Like we have no idea what's in here. I wrote all these prompts like 4 months ago, so I have no recollection anymore of like what's in there. Um, it's just it's whatever you pull. So we can probably go through the process and then we'll talk a little bit more about running wild. But first, let's figure out because that'll give us both a little bit of time to try to figure out what story we're going to tell.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to pick for you.
I love that we have like a real canister now. Like that's so awesome.
I know. I was supposed to buy it because I was supposed to brew beer out of it, and I've never done that.
No.
All right. This is the prompt. Breakup story. Do you have a breakup story?
Yeah.
All right.
I have several, so.
Me too. It's like, who does not have a... We all have a breakup story.
Oh, at least one.
Yeah. Okay, I got the beach.
Oh, that's perfect for you. You're
I
right
know.
That's awesome.
But this is actually slightly difficult because I'm like, what story should I tell about the beach? Okay, I'm gonna need a few minutes. This is great. This is why we pad in the interview part.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
So, well, talk to us just a little bit, super broad. What is Running Wild Press for folks who don't know?
Oh, so for guys who don't know, so Running Wild Press, we publish cross-genre stories. So we actually have already had two Best of 2019 books. One of them was T's Dark Corners, and we also had two Best of 2020. And we've had a number of starred reviews, a number of stellar reviews. We've had a couple of the Amazon bestsellers. And we also have Rise Press, which is new. So Rise, we publish great genre stories written by people of color or other underrepresented groups. We're right now in the middle of an open submission period for a short story anthology. So if you have something that you think would be good, go to Submittable and then search on Running Wild Press or Rise, RIZE, and then it should come up among the various options, and then feel free, send us your work. You don't have to have an agent. Just send us what you think is polished, and we'll take it from there. So.
Yay! Yeah, you talked a little bit about Rise. I also am curious, as the founder and executive editor, what was the initial idea behind Running Wild?
So Running Wild, I started it because I knew so many amazing authors that like I would read their work and I'm like, this is a classic, or this could be a bestseller. And I would really heavily encourage these folks to send their work out. Oh, and by the way, like I was teaching creative writing at the time, and I had a writers community and all this stuff. So I was giving people guidance, mentoring them, and all that. And I would check back in like 6 months, a year later, and I'd find out that they couldn't get it published. And I was like, what kind of feedback did you get? And they were like, it was just kind of like, oh, it's not quite for us or whatever. So fast forward, I start dating my now husband, and I'm telling him this. I'm like, I don't get it, man. Like, these are really fabulous stories. There's no reason that they're not getting published. It doesn't make any sense. So he's like, well, if you feel that way, then why don't you just start your own press? And I was like, I can do that? So, and so like for context, my husband's a musician. He's a drummer and a producer and a singer. And so he comes from the indie world. So to him, it was like, well, yeah, of course you can do that, right? So I started doing my homework, and when I was going to conferences and stuff, I started interviewing like agents and editors from the mid-size and larger houses to find out, like, how do you decide on what you want to pick up? And that's when I found out that a lot of times, especially for the large publishing houses, there's actually a committee. So they'll get a story, and they have to put the story, like the novel or whatever, to the committee, and they have to basically prove or argue that it's going to be a really good seller. And the easiest way to do that is to bring forward with like comps, right? So books that have done that are similar and have done well in the market. And I asked them, like, have you ever like turned something down that you regretted? And every single one said yes. And I was like, well, what was the situation, right? Like, what happened? And it turns out a lot of times these were cross-genre stories. So what I mean by that is, it's a story that when you read it, it's a little literary, a little commercial, a little YA, a little romance, a little thriller, right? It kind of fits into multiple genres. And because it doesn't really fit neatly in that box, right? So the definition of those specific genres, they turned it down. And I was like, oh, well, that doesn't, like, I get it from a business perspective, but in a lot of other ways, it doesn't make sense, because it's kind of like, well, everything has themes, right? Everything has themes. Everything has, a broader story to it. Like, you can figure out ways to market a story, right? You just have to put the work in. But anyway, so I was like, well, then I'm just going to go ahead and start a press, and I'll specifically target those stories that don't fit neatly within what we considered like a genre box. And that's how we started Running Wild.
Heck yeah. I feel like this makes a ton of sense of why I got published with Running Wild, because I've never fit into a box, like, ever. People are like, what do you write? And I'm like, stuff.
Like, full disclosure, right? You and I went to grad school together, so we knew each other's writing. And it was like, and it's funny because our MFA, the gentleman who started it, was like, no one can write genre. And we were all like, well, I don't really write. I mean, I write sort of a little everything, So it's just kind of funny that so many of us end up in that space.
Full disclosure, I feel like I write masterpieces anyway.
As you should.
Like, I create art. Whether other people see it as art or whether I see that 2 or 3 days later when I reread it, and then I'm like, nah. Or I'm like, yes, you are on to something. Yeah. So could you give us a little bit of a sneak peek of the kinds of stories, the kinds of books that we can look forward to this year from Running Wild?
Well, this year we actually have Stargazing in Solitude by Suzanne Samples, which is coming out in December. And so Suzanne we published her memoir, Frontal Matter Glue Gone Wild. It was the other best of 2019. And it's a memoir about her experiences. Oh my God, total love. Her experiences with brain cancer, which sounds like a complete downer, right? But she is so freaking hilarious. Her prose are so fabulous. And she actually got a starred review from Kirkus. So I can't recommend Stargazing in Solitude more. It is so fabulous. Like, you absolutely have to pick it up. Another one that just came out like the beginning of June was Take Me With You by Vanessa Carlisle. And let's just say it's dedicated to the Hooker Army. Another one I cannot highly recommend enough. You've got to pick this up. Vanessa is an amazing storyteller. She is just absolutely phenomenal. And then other than that, pretty much everything else is scheduled to come out next year, just because we switched to a new distributor and they like a certain period of time between when a book is finalized and when it's out, like, and available to the broader market. And so we pushed out a lot of our launch dates to 2022.
That makes sense. That also helps me because I'm writing my second book and it's taking longer than I thought. So, yay for delays.
Totally.
I will get there. I'm only self-deprecating like this because I'm like 3 or 4 beers in, and I'm about to be a little bit more. All right, so let's get to our. I feel like I finally found a beach story. Also.
Okay. Oh wait, and don't forget Rise Press. So for Rise Press, we have 3 stories coming out in 2022. And one of them is a women's fiction. Another one is more along the lines of like Harry Potter fantasy, but a little bit darker. And then the third is more along the lines of like a classic mystery. So really great genres, guys. You got it. I know I'm gonna say this about everything, but I think you're gonna love every single one of these. So when we're closer to them, I'm gonna we can talk about them in more detail, but oh my God, you'll love them. Love them.
And we can bring a lot of these folks in as guests because usually we do this with guests, but tonight it's just us. It's fine. All right, so let's get with the impromptu stories. We have a breakup story from Lisa.
Okay, so this is sort of a breakup story, and I've never shared this before. Like, I mean, literally, I've never told anybody this story before. So, oh well, you're probably gonna get offended. Anyway, not you, Teehee, meaning everybody else who's watching, you'll probably get offended. Oh, by the way, if anybody has any comments or whatever, go ahead and put them in the comment section. And if you have any questions or whatever, then Teehee and I are more than happy to answer. Especially the more that we drink, we become more open.
Exactly.
Okay, so I was a hardcore nerd. Like, I was such an uber geek and dork. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, I was AP everything. I went to a college prep high school. I was in advanced, like, everything, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And part of that too was I didn't date, and I didn't date for a variety of reasons. A lot of it had to do with my own self-esteem. At the time, if you would have asked me, I would have said like I was too ugly that nobody wanted to date me. But it had, obviously, just that statement alone tells you I had self-esteem issues. So, okay. So I finally started dating someone when I was like 17 years old. So I was a junior in high school, and he was 22, I think. My first real boyfriend, he was a drummer. So you're probably already noticing a theme with me and musicians, and it would be true. And so we were dating for a while, and I was about to go away for like the summer to Florida because a friend of mine So I lived in New Jersey, and I had a lot of friends like in the Northeast Philly area. And I had one friend who was from northern New Jersey, and her family had just moved to Florida. And so I was going to spend, I think it was something crazy, like 3 weeks with them in the summer. And I'm pretty sure it was Fort Lauderdale. So I was so insecure. I was convinced that like when I would leave, he would go off and have sex with like a jillion people because I was 17 and it was my first boyfriend, and I was, crazy insecure. And I'd never had sex yet. I was still a virgin at 17. So yes, everyone, you can take your jaws, and because at least in my neighborhood, it was more likely that you had sex for the first time when you were like 12, 13, 14, not 17.
12 is young.
Well, if you menstruate, if you kind of, some people mature pretty young. But anyway, it is young, but that was sort of normal in my neighborhood. Okay, so my then boyfriend was like, okay, like we're gonna, So I was like, yeah, let's go do it. So needless to say, he was 6'7", 6'8", and I was a virgin. So I want you to kind of digest that for a sec. Yeah. So let's just say we attempted, and I don't remember how this all went down, but at one point he basically proposed, which shocked the hell out of me because I was like, I'm 17, you're 22. He was a mechanic and a drummer, and like I was like, really? Like mind you, again, I was a super nerd, so I knew I was going to go to college. Like there was no way I was getting married at like 17, 18 years old, right? So there was something about how it transpired. I was like, can I ask you a question? And he was like, yeah. I'm like, how many times have you been engaged? Okay. So now, I want you to take this long silence to mean what you should think it means. He had been engaged like 6 or 8 times. So it turned out that he had a tendency to date virgins because he would meet them at this one rock club, which is where actually I met him. And it was one of the rare rock clubs in Philly where you could be, I think it was like 16. It was 16 and up. So they had one section that was for under 16 up to 21, and then 21 and over. But if you were over 21, you could go between the two, right? Because one had no alcohol and the other had alcohol. So basically he would meet girls under 21, obviously who were underage, and date them. And then he had himself convinced that if they were hesitant to have sex, it was because they were raised to not have sex until they were married. So,
and he was also 6'7".
Yes, which was the real reason. At least on my part, that was the real reason. So, and he was in proportion, to be clear. Like he was 7, 6, 8, he was in proportion. Okay. So I was like, and he was like, well, it's normal because, if, you go out with someone and you're a virgin, and then, well, then obviously you should get engaged. And I was like, no, I'm not getting engaged. Like, I'm going to college. I'm going to do all this stuff. Like, this is not me. Like, I'm not doing this. Right. So needless to say, it's not that we broke up after that, but it was like this slow decline of like no longer hanging out, no longer, because my reaction wasn't what he had anticipated. Like he was expecting like, yes, let's get married and now have wild, crazy sex and blah blah blah. And I was like, I am not I'm not getting married. Like you've got lost your mind. I am too young for this. Like this is not an if then. Like these are not, it's not a cause and effect, right? This is not how this works. So, yeah.
It's just so also crazy to be like, if you're 6'7" and proportionate, like, why are you going after virgins? Like, shouldn't you want somebody who, like, maybe has some experience with what you're packing?
I don't know if he intentionally was going after virgins or because let's just say he was very popular.
Yeah. And
like,
22-year-old men are stupid.
Going out with me because you can have anybody you want. And, yep.
He's not. He wasn't at the time. I feel like making great life choices, especially like because you were like he proposed like 6 or 7 times. I was like he has had sex 6 or 7 times.
Well, no, that's just when he proposed. Let's pay attention to that because the first time he had sex, he was like 14.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I have been one of these people. This is too much information. Who's like leaned into proposing very early on in a hookup just because of the sexual compatibility. And then I'm like, oh, this is great. We should get married. But then I think that in my head and then I walk it back.
Because then it's like, like this needs to be more than sex. Yeah.
Basically. It's like, yeah, just because we have sex together in a good way does not mean that like a life together is the optimal thing.
Now, mind you, somehow I attracted for a good portion of my life individuals who were either tall and proportionate or shorter and disproportionate.
Ooh. I like this saying of tall and proportionate, and I'm gonna use this for the rest of my life.
And I was always like, I don't know how this keeps happening. Like
some people just have that magic.
Seriously. And that and the magic of like if he's super popular.
I will say this as the gay man who does both parts of that gay sex act is like sometimes it's good if you're a bottom if somebody is not tall and proportionate.
Right.
It's just like because I don't want to wear adult diapers when I'm like 65. So I'm like, please don't like destroy me. This is fine. This is good. This is desirable.
Yeah, no, I have no idea why. But
yeah. I could tell it's not a beach story, but like I totally in the same vein have a story about Shaquille O'Neal's younger cousin, who's somebody I tried to have sex with, and he was tall and proportionate.
Oh my.
I gave it the best shot I had. I was young. I couldn't do it. Hashtag tall and proportionate.
Right? Like that needs to be a new hashtag because it's like I don't know. I don't know, man. I was just like, hi, how does this keep happening?
Also, we shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. If it's happening, it's happening. Manifest. Hashtag manifest. Yes.
I mean, yes, it's wonderful to be gifted. Absolutely. I'm not dissing at all. I'm just saying, like, when you're a virgin and it's like, what?
Yeah. this is going to sound weird. The first two people I lost my virginity with were not tall and proportionate. They were small and proportionate, and that was fine because I didn't
No,
know what
that's
I was
perfect.
doing.
Especially
Yeah,
since yeah.
it's like this works out great. So I tend to run the gamut in my own, I guess, sexual adventures of people who fit all sorts of sizes of proportionality.
Cool.
It's fine. I actually enjoy it. It's all good. Whew, the emails I'm gonna receive. It's fun. All right, so I'm gonna start with
this going viral in like 2 years from now, and then we'll be like, did we have that conversation? I don't remember having that conversation.
Yep. And I'm like, that must have been a day that ended in Y that I was talking about the girth of penises I've taken. Who knows?
Oh my god.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears. This story is a lot less sexual. This is my story of the beach. I'm gonna try to change everyone's names, even though I don't think anybody who is implicated is gonna be involved. And it's not really. We'll see if how sexual this story goes. But I was here in Puerto Vallarta. I had a really good friend that I will call Carl. And Carl was like, we should go hang out and do like a weekend excursion one time. And so he was like, let's go to Yelapa. Yelapa is a small beach town. It's like a 40-minute boat ride from Puerto Vallarta. It's a beautiful boat ride. It's amazing. And so I was like, all right, cool. Like, I'm ready to go. It has a perfect, beautiful beach. Hashtag the beach. So I show up early because I'm a Virgo and that's who I am. Implicitly, I'm like 15 minutes early and just sitting there waiting around. And this guy comes up who is not Carl. It's a guy who I will call Jose. I met Jose weeks prior. And I felt like he was kind of hitting on me, but I also felt like he was very arrogant. I also felt like he was hashtag tall and not proportionate. And so I was like, I'm not really feeling you. But it turns out my friend Carl was like low key in love with this guy. And he met after I sort of rejected this guy. So I was like, oh, this is going to be awkward. And eventually the three of us get there and they're like getting ready to load on the boat. And I was like, Carl, who else is coming? And he's like, it's just us. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be awkward. Also, I had kind of fooled around with Carl once upon a time. So like that makes it even more awkward, you know, and they're obviously, once we get on the boat, I can tell that they've been fucking each other. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like everybody knows everybody's size penis at this point.
Right.
Like, because we're a bunch of gay men, and that's how we are. And we go to Yelapa and we dock and we walk down to the beach. And the beach is beautiful. There's this giant iguana. It's on my Instagram. I'm like sitting there holding this giant iguana and taking pictures because I love iguanas. And there's like parasailing that you can do, and the drinks are cheap. And everybody is trying to sell you weed. Like they're just walking by and they're like, Mota, you want smoke? And I'm like, no, that's fine. And it's great. But apparently there's also several waterfalls. And so this guy, Jose, the dude I rejected that I didn't like, who my friend is now dating, and thus like completely deferential to him. He's like, I've heard that there is a waterfall in downtown Yelapa near all the hotels. It's like a 5-minute walk to, or we can go to the one that's like a 30-minute walk away, but apparently it's better.
Okay.
Carl's like, yes, it's better. Let's go. He's never heard of it. I've never heard of it. And I have to go with the group. So I'm like, all right, fine. So we start walking down this trail and we get away from the town of Yelapa that only takes about 2 minutes to get away from because it's a small town that's just built around the beach. And then it becomes like rural central Mexico where like we're like walking around donkeys and mules and we have to be careful because they will just back kick you. And that can like break your rib cage. There's this little river. There's a point where we have to go across a suspension bridge that's made out of like old wooden planks. So it's like a literal Indiana Jones movie where like every step you step on one and it's not quite safe. And then like I stepped on one that broke
Oh.
and it was just gripping. And I was like, this waterfall better be soon. And we keep going and we keep walking further and further in past like this horse pasture with all the horse manure, past all these like not even brick or adobe homes, but just settlements of people. There used to be ATV people who would be driving down the road and we'd have to get out of the way, but then they stopped. So I was like, oh, this is even where all-terrain vehicles don't go. But then, ironically, weirdly, there are restaurants set up outside of shacks that are just restaurants where people are hanging out. And we're like, where's the waterfall in Spanish? I don't know how to say waterfall in Spanish. I was leaning on Jose, whose Spanish also wasn't that great. Hashtag, I didn't really like Jose that much. And so he keeps saying, and he's like, oh, it's like 5 minutes. It's like 5 minutes. And then the one time I get really good at it, which is about an hour later, as we're going deeper and deeper into the jungle, I'm getting bit up. I'm worried about dengue and dengue fever because it's the tropics and that can happen. And he asked somebody, he's like, how long is it until the waterfall? And I heard it in Spanish and could recognize it. It's another hour. And I look at my watch and I'm like, the last boat that leaves Jalapa for Puerto Vallarta is in 1 hour. And we've been hiking for an hour and a half. So not only do we have to turn around, we have to turn around and run. We have to run over the Indiana Jones bridge that has Lord knows what creatures at the bottom of that river, like snappy, like, and I already broke one step. So I'm like, if y'all want to keep going to see the waterfall, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to catch my boat back home. But all three of us decided to turn around. We all have to take turns because we can't go on that bridge. That was like the biggest thing because it's so rickety. It's one by one. And it's literally as intense as an Indiana Jones movie. You see someone walk across, you can almost hear that like tribal music, like what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And I can like see my plank that I broke. And I'm like, Carl, don't hit that one. Which is like bad to distract somebody on like a walk of death across the suspension bridge. But we finally all make it. We get back to the beach, which is where I wanted to spend my whole time smoking Malta, but like, no, we had to go. And as soon as we make it back to the beach, we're like, oh, it's so lovely. Then we could hear the horn of the fucking water taxi. And we had to run up to the dock and get on the boat. And that was my trip to Yelapa that I saw about 5% of. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Please stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. The end of my story.
Oh my god, that's perfect.
I'm also really white knuckling having to use the restroom real quick. Can I use the restroom real quick? Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay, so everybody who's watching, so we do this Storytellers Happy Hour every month. And we typically invite different editors or authors or whomever. If you are watching and you'd like to join us, feel free to go ahead and message me at lkastner@runningwildpress.com. Let me know that you'd like to join us, and we'll invite you to an upcoming Storytellers Happy Hour. Same format. So basically, all you do is come on. Teehee will pick a prompt for you, and then you just come up with something. It doesn't have to be real. It can be something that you just completely made up on the fly. And then we go around in a circle, and we each share a story. So it's actually it's so much fun. The very first one we ever did had Taylor Grant, who's another one of our amazing authors, Jonathan Mayberry, who's just an absolutely fantastic human being, a New York Times bestseller, and and Tone Milazzo. So Tone is another one of our fantastic authors, and we had such a blast during that hour. I cannot describe how much fun we had. So we would love it if you guys want to join us. Like I said, just message me and we will make it happen. Okay.
I'm back. I'm so sorry. I
No,
was like so many beers in and I broke the seal.
all good. So what I just basically, everyone who's watching, I let them know to just send me an email at lkstner@runningwildpress.com if they want to join us for one of our happy hours, and then we'll do what we did tonight, right? You'll just pick a prompt for them, and we'll get to storytelling. So
Yeah, there's a ton of them in here. There's enough that if we do a show once a month with like a guest or two, it will take us probably the whole year to get through all of these.
oh, cool! Yay! And then we'll just come up with
Yeah. And then we'll just come up with more. I didn't even know, like, this is how long it's been. Like, both of these that we pulled, I was like, oh, I wrote those? They're in my handwriting. I definitely wrote those. Totally didn't remember.
That's awesome.
Also,
So,
I'm sorry. Hashtag
no,
tall and appropriate. I'm using that for the rest of my life.
you are fabulous. There is no question you're fabulous. So, I don't know. I guess that's it. I don't know.
I think that is it, probably.
Yeah. So, with that,
Yeah.
cheers. And anyone who's watching, we hope you join us for another Storytellers Happy Hour. We will be more than happy to have you join us. And with that, I wish everyone a fabulous night and much love. Bye, guys.